Okay, let me just go ahead and make sure that I'm good to go and everything's going through just fine. How's it going, everybody? Welcome, welcome, welcome back. We're playing a little bit more of Umineko today. So, let me just get started, make sure that everything else is prepared, that my mic is going through. OBS likes to fuck with all my settings over the weekend, so just making sure. It looks like you can hear my voice. Perfect, perfect, perfect. And let's go over some of the things that happened since last time, because it has been a couple days. Okay, awesome. It is going through just fine. So, last time on here, I believe we already went through the Golden Slaughter, which is like the first 6 victims showed up. That was 2 streams ago. And so tensions are kind of rising between the different family members, trying to figure out just what the fuck is going on. Is it a family member? Is it someone who's on the premise? Or is it the witch Beatrice? What is going on? And one of the things that happened was that our grandfather has been missing too. So, Ava kind of did this whole thing where she was blaming Natsui for the disappearance of the grandfather. And if she was responsible for the disappearance of the grandfather, she was probably responsible for the deaths of all the other 6. At least that was what Ava was trying to do. I get a little one-up on her. Fortunately, Battler was there and was like, Ava, fuck you. Your logic is not that great. So we kind of had a bit of a back and forth with her. So things have calmed down a little bit because we've essentially thrown the accusation that, you know, if you're going to say Natsui is guilty of grandfather, then where were you when the 6 died? And that sort of kind of kept things quiet a little bit. So we're going to continue where that left off. Hideyoshi is going, Ava, I think we better cool our heads too. The receipt's definitely a big clue for figuring out how father disappeared. We should tell the police about it when they come. That's right. Right. Yeah, so there was a big old thing. Okay, so it's been a couple days, but I don't remember all the details. But there was a thing about a receipt. See, when Natsui originally went out, Natsui went to go visit grandfather first thing in the morning. Ava, I don't know what the fuck she was doing, because it's really weird, but she put a receipt in the door to make it look like, to kind of create a closed room of itself, and ultimately saying that, like, because no one entered the room when that receipt was in the door, that must mean that grandfather didn't leave the room. Not realizing that they kind of opened the door a second time later on, and Battler kind of says that maybe grandfather snuck out during that time. So this whole receipt thing might be big, might not be big. I don't really know. We'll figure it out. That's right. I felt a little triumphant when I figured out that part with the receipt. Of course, it isn't fair to only suspect Natsui Nisan, right? We're just as suspicious. But still, Battler-kun, at least the part about the receipt is real, okay? Don't forget it. And try thinking deeply about what it means one more time, okay? Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi stood up. It looked like they planned on leaving the parlor. In the end, it's pointless for us to keep playing detectives. After all, the police will reveal everything anyway. That's right. Even if we don't play the detective game, the typhoon will pass. And when those lively seagulls return to the harbor, everything will settle itself. That's right. If you think about it, this kind of crime is completely trivial. It will definitely be resolved, and when we do nothing, when the seagulls cry. Natsui Nisan, I take it you don't seem to see my face anymore. I feel the same. If I remember correctly, yesterday you had some rooms prepared for us in the mansion so that we wouldn't need to go back to the guest house, right? Those should each have a bath and a toilet, as well as a lock and chain to secure the door. There's even a bed to lie on, and my husband will be able to watch TV without having to fight with Maria-chan over which channel to watch, right? Do whatever you want, but make sure to be cautious. Thank you, Nisan. And mind your own business. I'll be counting on you to keep an eye on everyone, okay? Because the culprit is definitely here. And Nisan, make sure you don't forget to keep an eye on yourself, too. Have you finished taking your parting shots? Yes, I'm finished. See you, Natsui Nisan. Genji-san, let us know when it's time for dinner. Until then, we'll lock ourselves in with the chain. Genji, Cannon, escort them to the guest room. We'll be fine. I hate shady escorts. In fact, I'll be more comfortable if nobody leaves this room until we reach ours. Let's go, George. I'll stay here with everyone. George, the culprit is in this room. Do you plan on staying in the place like that? Leaving this room would be the same as suspecting one of my relatives. I can't believe anyone in our family is capable of something that horrible. George, darling, you tell him too. George is already an adult man. If his code tells him not to leave this room, then it's up to him. Let him do what he wants. Father. Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi left. The only voice that could call after them was the sound of the rain. The parlor was being buried beneath the savage atmosphere. When I looked at the clock, I was surprised to find out that it was already evening. We had already spent that much time worrying about the needless things, talking with each other, fighting with each other. Feeling bored, I started scratching my head when Maria and I made eye contact. I was a little surprised since I thought she was completely immersed in the TV. I believe it now. Who? The letter, the murders, everything. It was all Beatrice. In fact, I almost feel like begging her to come out and take credit for it all. I want to be the work of a 19th person. Otherwise, the 18 of us will keep on suspecting each other. I think believing in a 19th person is better than that. Bringing grandfather outside without opening the doors and windows must have been a piece of cake for Beatrice, right? Maria, after taking a single short breath, hung her head and raised her face again. That's right. Locking a door is useless against a witch. Beatrice is familiar with all 72 demons. The 33rd ranked, Gap, gives the power to instantly carry the desired person to any location. To her, taking a person out of a closed room isn't hard at all, you see. Witches sure are incredible. Tell her, if she feels like committing another crime, to do it in a way that no human could. And to make me believe that a 19th person, no, a witch, exists. Okay. If I meet her, I'll tell her. Crap. Nothing's made sense to me for a while now. Just when I want to believe in a 19th person, I deny it. And just when I want to believe there are only 18 people, I deny that too. Even though I want there to be more than just the 19 people here, I can't accept the existence of that 19th person. In short, even though there are more than 19 people, there are less than more than 18 people, there are less than 19 people. The number of people in this mansion is less than 19, but greater than 18. So the number of people can't be represented by an integer. However, it's impossible for there to be anything after the decimal point. You shouldn't be able to show a number of people who are with anything but an integer. And yet, 19 is greater than x, which is greater than 18. How do you explain that fraction less than 1? It's no wonder. That 19th person was something that couldn't be seen. That's why, since you can only write the number of people as an integer, you couldn't see that person. The witch cannot be seen. Because Beatrice has no body. Therefore, she is invisible. Is there a 19th person or not? Does the witch exist or not? 19 is greater than x, which is greater than 18. The witch exists somewhere in that x. Sorry, excuse me. Having a bit of a moment. Ooh, sorry. Oh, fucking hell. Sorry, I was drinking something and it went down the wrong tube. It's actually hurting. Yeah. The uncomfortable atmosphere continued after even those two left. It was thick with the idea that simply thinking about the culprit's identity would be the same as deciding whom to suspect. begun to feel like discussion of the case was itself taboo. So no one mentioned the case, at least out loud. However, those thoughts were what filled our minds. All that we couldn't say aloud made our heads feel like they were going to explode. So at least on the outside, the parlor had once again regained its calm mood. Everything was left unsettled. It feels like the rain's gotten a little lighter. Ooh, still pouring down. Ooh. Even if it did stop, there's no boat on this island. But it'd be nice if a boat came quickly tomorrow. I've had enough of this Western Mansion vacation. Mom, when will the boat come tomorrow? Normally the boat to take them back would arrive at 3 today. They probably sent us a phone call to say that it would come after the typhoon passed, and unfortunately the phones aren't working. But there are children over there. They were told to both drop off and collect our guests, so they will most likely arrive first thing tomorrow morning. Probably about 9, I believe. It's completely black outside. When I look at the clock, I realize that it was just past 7. I was starting to get hungry. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was cooking enthusiastically. She had laid out a variety of dishes, and while they didn't match the level of Goda's artful cooking, they were still quite gorgeous. It was an act of kindness from Kumasawa, who was trying to re-enliven everyone's low spirits with some food. Kumasawa wasn't nearly as talented as the professional cook like Goda, but still, she was far from unskilled. On the contrary, since she had been brought up in a fishing village, the simple food she created was sometimes highly praised. Kanon arranged the food Kumasawa had finished creating on dishes under her direction. Kanon also helped in the kitchen sometimes, but since he was rarely placed in that role, he was slightly awkward, even though he tried his best. Self-conscious about the fact that he couldn't clearly arrange the food, Kanon's expression darkened slightly. But Kumasawa smiled as though everything was fine. It's arranged beautifully. Kanon-kun, aren't you skilled? If it had been Shannon Nissan, it would look even more beautiful. Kanon stopped arranging the food for a bit and hung his head. Shannon was the one who always assisted Kumasawa in her cooking. Tonight, Kanon was doing it instead. And as he remembered Shannon's face in her brutal end, he grimaced. Forget that for now. Genji spoke kindly to Kanon as he advanced the pawn. Nanjo had escaped from the parlor once the mood had shrunk sour, and Genji had become his opponent in a game of chess upon Nanjo's request. Yes, I will forget it for now. Indeed, that is probably for the best. Genji purposely refrained from facing Kanon as he spoke. He did so because he understood that it might make things tougher on Kanon if he noticed that someone was looking at his eyes. Nanjo also understood that and held back any thoughtless words. I wonder when Kinzo's gone. I hope they're safe, but I do not know. However, I believe everything has proceeded as the master had hoped and arranged for. To distrust that would exceed my role as furniture in service to the master. Aren't you scared?
Let's make it.
Aren't you scared, Genji-san? I am frightened that something bad will occur again tonight. I have nothing to be afraid of. I serve the Yorishimiya family, and that is all. Nanjo sighed, threw his nose, and made a careful, considered move. Nanjo was very slightly dubious. Could Genji possibly be thinking that he'd be left out of this? He couldn't even imagine what was happening inside the mansion, but he definitely couldn't deny the possibility that Kinzo has devised something. If you liken this island to chess, Kinzo had opened the game, and the result 6 pieces have been defeated. Could it be that Genji was calm because he alone was on the outside of the chessboard and therefore safe? Nanjo thought about it. Isn't everyone just a piece on this chessboard, lined up equally without any exceptions? Was even Genji, who had gained more of Kinzo's trust than anyone, no, who was confident of his position as Kinzo's only close friend, just another one of the pieces laid out on the chessboard? Genji-san, I am truly frightened about tonight. I hope that with all my heart that we will still be safe when tomorrow morning comes. The guest rooms Eva and Hideyoshi moved into had originally been built to house guests before the house guest rooms in construction. So until a few years ago, they had stayed in these rooms every family conference, and were very familiar with them. This room was just like that, a room at a hotel, with a bedroom and a bathroom. So even though that they were still shut in, it was far more comfortable than the parlor. Guess it's true you can relax more when you're alone with your family. Maybe it'd be better if everyone else shut themselves in guest rooms and locked the doors. Natsui-ni-sen said that no one could leave the parlor throwing her weight around. I'm sure no one will be able to talk back. Well, she does have a gun, to be fair. I mean, let's be honest. You're not exactly going to sit there and argue with the guy with a rifle in his hand. You're probably going to do what he says. She's always been treated so coldly, but now that Nissan is dead, she's getting excited about finally having so much power. Seriously, how shameless can she be? Come on, don't say that. Natsui-ni-sen's doing pretty well. No need to jump on her like that. And about that receipt earlier, you went too far. Come on, if I hadn't said it there wouldn't be any good time to say it. Eva, sulking cutely and looking at the television, sat alongside Hideyoshi, who was laying on the bed. Still, we haven't been alone like this for quite some time. You're right. Come to think of it, both you and I have gotten pretty old. Since George's son was born, everything's gone by in a blink of an eye. It really has. I wonder if we're too hasty in having a child. Eva's eyes looked like they were staring off into the distance. Yes, she thought of it as a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Her older brother Kraus had been unable to father a child for quite some time. 6 years passed after his marriage to Natsui without any sign of pregnancy, which didn't please Kinzo at all. Eva herself had thought about that since her name would be moved outside the Urashimiya register when she got married anyway. It didn't matter what successor to the headship was born or not. And then, one day, she had a heavenly revelation. Or maybe it was the whispers of the devil that she had listened to in her greed. If she could give birth to a successor first, wouldn't she be able to remain in the Urashimiya register? If things went well, might she have a chance to inherit the Urashimiya family herself? When she proposed this to Hideyoshi, he had approved of it instantly. This wasn't because Hideyoshi had also greedy thoughts. For Hideyoshi, who had no close relatives, it was a chance for him to feel once more that long-forgotten thing called family. So when he got married, he hadn't fussed over which last name they were to keep, and quickly agreed to have his name entered into the Urashimiya family register. It hadn't been easy to persuade Kinzo, but as his daughter, Eva knew Kinzo's personality well. And so by choosing that time when Kinzo was most dissatisfied with Natsui, she was magnificently able to make him accept Hideyoshi as an adoptive son-in-law. Looking at Hideyoshi, who had achieved success after starting from nothing, Kinzo might have seen a little bit of himself. He quickly grew to like Hideyoshi and approve his transfer into the Urashimiya register. George would eventually become the successor to the Urashimiya family. They had raised him strictly with that purpose in mind. He had been worth their while and grown into a fabulously young man who would not disappoint no matter where he went. That is why he had not been permitted to fall in love with a servant like Shannon. So when she learned that Shannon was dead and the engagement was now invalid, though part of her still been shocked by the gruesome crime, part of her had also been relieved that her dear George wouldn't have been stolen by some servant girl. I have hated Kraus Nissan since long ago. He was so full of himself, always swaggering around. So proud that he would one day become the head. So I wanted to get back at him. Was that just a childish emotion? But in the day, that emotion guided my entire life. If that had been all, then it would have been fine. But because of that emotion, I got you and George involved. I used you. Eva, don't blame yourself for that. Hideyoshi got up and held Eva's shoulders. She could feel a warmth understanding from him. Well, I reached a halfway point in my life long ago. But you know, I have absolutely no regrets about how I lived my life. Not one. I think that since I've been with you, Eva, I've been able to relish that enjoyable life that no other men never will. After I lost my relatives in the war, you reminded me what the warmth of family is. So I'm grateful to the Urashimiya family, and think of it as my only one. And this life I've led with you, and not a single thing's been wasted. It's really been a fun life till today. Thank you, darling. Eva hung her head, burying her face in Hideyoshi's chest. Probably no one in the parlor could even imagine that the sight of Eva existed. I am the one who should be thanking you. Until today, there has not been a single day I've regretted being with you. Me too. I'm so glad to have you by my side. George is already a fine adult. Even if I don't look out for him, he's a man who can do his job well on his own. I wonder, around New Year's, do you want to go spend some time in the Maldives? Just us, no one else. No way! Aren't you always saying that you're so busy responding to New Year's cards that you don't even sleep? None of that this New Year's. I won't read New Year's cards. I'll just stay quiet and check to see if I've won the New Year's lottery. Sure be nice if I won a color TV this year. No way. I don't want to waste time checking the lottery while I'm in the Maldives. Then none of that either. How does it sound? Just the two of us, taking it easy like we were newlyweds, just before George was born. Yes. In that case, fine. I hear the Maldives are wonderful. An island with nothing on it, surrounded by beautiful coral reefs and cottages lined up over the water. Like when we were newlyweds, you said. Starting when... As soon as I finish up some other business. I won't know until I ask the travel agency, probably before New Year's Eve. No way. Right now. I want to go right now. Ava nagged at his lips in a pensive yet flirtatious manner. The only sound that filled the room was the distant voice of the announcer on the news which Hideyoshi had left on, and the obnoxious pounding of the rain against the window. Oh, they're actually kind of cute. That's actually really sweet. Ava's come off as a bitch the entire time, but, you know, that was kind of like a soft side of her we haven't seen. Okay, I gotta be right back. Okay. Sorry about that. Madame, dinner is being prepared. Will you eat in here again? Yes. Have it brought here. Is Dr. Nanjo still in the kitchen? Yes. He said he wishes to carefully deliberate over his next move. Do not worry. He is with the other servants. Genji's good enough to chess to be grandfather's opponent. I hear he's even better at Dr. Nanjo, right? That's right. Long ago he played against me, and he must have let me win. Maria, sounds like you have time to. It'll be time to eat soon. But look at you. You've been watching TV all day long, and you still haven't gotten bored. Oh, I'm always watching TV, so I'm fine. Oh, hey, Maria sure is a TV kid. Food's coming, so we have to get you clean. We have to clean up the table. Earlier, we had torn several pages out of Maria's notebook, and it was now a mess where everyone had been drawing together. Jessica began cleaning that up quickly. Still, everyone here had really can draw. I never guessed. Genji, ask Ava-san and Hideyoshi-san whether they'd at least like to have dinner with us, although they would probably turn us down. Certainly. First father, now Ava-san. It's quite hard to gather everyone to the Yorishimiya dinner table. Natsui felt her headache start throbbing and lightly held her temples. The distance from the kitchen to the parlor wasn't that great, so Genji had gone and come back by himself, but the guest room was a little farther away. Natsui had warned him that to avoid being alone whenever possible, and just now Nanjo had also admonished him, saying it would be better if he held a little more concern for his safety. Kanon accompanied Genji, and the two of them went to Ava and Hideyoshi in the guest room. Genji knocked on the door. Ava-sama, Hideyoshi-sama, dinner has been prepared. He waited a short while for them to come out, but there was no response. Genji-sama, look at this. Kanon pointed under the door. A Western envelope had been inserted under it. Normally, when something was inserted this way, it'd be interrupted as a message from someone outside to someone in the room. So since this might be a private note meant for Ava and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji were supposed to take interest in. So since Hideyoshi must have a private note meant for Eva and... okay, let me read this. Sorry, I got distracted by a phone call. Normally when something was inserted this way, it was interpreted as a message from someone outside it to someone in the room. So since this might be a private note made for Eva and Hideyoshi, it was not something that Kanon and Genji was supposed to take interest in. But this Western envelope was one of Kenzo's, the same kind as Maria had taken out last night and surprised everyone with. There could be no mistake. It's one of the Master's envelopes. Of course it'd be. Even though this was one of Kenzo's envelopes, the letter Maria read aloud the previous night hadn't come from Kenzo. Genji continued knocking a little hard and called out in a loud voice. Eva-sama! Eva-sama! It's Genji. Are you there? Please answer, Eva-sama. But there's no response from the inside. Sometimes, when the servant went to call some guests for a meal, the guests would be sleeping so deeply they wouldn't wake up. In times like this, the servants would stick a letter in the door and show that it was time to come out and let the guests be. But despite that, Genji beat even harder on the door and called out Eva's name. However, there was no answer. Kanon stuck his ear to the door, held his breath, and listened for any sounds coming from the inside. I hear something that sounds like a television, but I don't sense anyone. The rooms might be empty. Genji took out a handkerchief and, careful not to touch it with his bare hands, gently pulled out the envelope that had been stuck under the door. It was sealed with a deep red sealing wax. Without a doubt, the mark on that sealing wax had come from the Yoshimiya family head's ring. Eva-sama! Eva-sama! Please answer! Are you still in your room? But there was no answer. There was a chance that the two were aimlessly walking around the mansion. This was the home that Eva had grown up in. There was plenty of reasons to think she had gone out on a casual stroll. Genji propped around the pocket and pulled a bundle of keys which contained the key that would open the guest room. Genji-sama? Kanon also understood what this meant. They would sometimes unlock the door. They could go in and do things like make the beds, and only after they made sure the guests were out. To unlock the door for any other reason, especially to do so when there was a chance the guests had been given permission and might still be there, was an action unbecoming of a servant. But Genji had decided, if the only problem had been his knock, which hadn't received a reply, he wouldn't have gone this far. But the envelope under the door was doubtlessly one of Kenzo's. Or rather, one of the Western envelopes of the Yoshimiya family head. After last night, the sender of this envelope could be someone other than Kenzo, if this letter had been sent by someone else. Eva-sama, my apologies. Allow me to enter your room. After giving the final notice, Genji stuck one of the keys for the bundle into the keyhole. There was a sound of a door unlocking, and after slowly turning the knob, he slowly started opening the door. Lights seeped through the crack of the door. Were they in the room? Or had they forgotten to turn out the lights? Clink! It was the sound of the door chain being pulled tight. The chain had been secured. The chain couldn't be secured from the outside. So it also proved that they were in the room. The sound of voices on the TV seeped out of the room. The lights, the chain, and the TV. All these things made it clear that they were in the room. But there was no sign of them. Genji called to Eva once again through the crack in the door, but there was no answer. Genji-sama, what should we do? Part of their job as servants were able to unlock almost any lock in the mansion. They had no way to open a door with a chain. The only way to get by the chain was to cut it. This was certainly not permitted as part of a servant's usual work. A creepy chill had already rushed up their backs. Kanon held his breath again and tried to sense someone through the door, but even so, he was not able to sense anyone. I will call Madame in return. Kanon, cut the chain. Yes. As Kanon hurried away to get a cutting tool, Genji called him to a stop. Wait, Kanon. Return to the kitchen and take Kumasawa with you. You must not act alone. Yes, certainly. Like as though Kanon was wondering why he had to do something so troublesome in the middle of this urgent situation. But Genji had said it out of weariness. He didn't care what happened to himself. But in the worst case scenario, he didn't want anything to happen to Kanon. In the kitchen, Kumasawa was piling food on the serving cart, and Nanjo was waiting for Genji, apparently wanting to show him a move he had finally thought up that might turn the tables on him. But Genji's appearance immediately told him that something was wrong. Oh, what's happened, Genji-san? Dr. Nanjo, my apologies, but please allow me to match to be suspended for the time being. Cannon, take care of the chain. Kumasawa, stop setting up dinner for now and accompany Cannon. I will go over to Madame. If you would come with me, Dr. Nanjo. Has something happened? Genji took Nanjo, who still didn't know what was going on, and quickly left the kitchen. Kumasawa-san, my apologies, but please come with me. What has happened, Cannon-san? Kumasawa said exactly the same thing as Nanjo, unable to take in the situation, and chased after Cannon, who had flown out into the hallway. Taking Kumasawa with him, Cannon went to the storage room and looked through the tools packed with tools boxes and hanging over all the walls, trying to find something that could be used to cut the chain. What are you looking for? Let me help too. We're cutting a door chain. Where was that large wire cutter? A door chain? Why would you do something like that? The chain at Eva-sama and Hideyoshi-sama's room. Even though they should be inside, they didn't answer when we called them. It took Kumasawa some time to figure out how cutting the chain and Eva and Hideyoshi not answering were connected, but she realized that this was an urgent situation. That one would probably do the trick. Cannon took down a very large wire cutter that had been hanging on the wall. It was called a cutter, but maybe it's easier to understand it if it were like a sharpened like a giant pair of pliers. Cannon remembered once being warned that this dangerous tool could easily cut through one of your fingers. Cannon took that and rushed up the stairs. He already knew that instinctively. He should fight for every minute, every second to open it quickly. Or perhaps it was already... Please wait, Cannon-san. Hurry! Kumasawa eventually caught up with him, gasping for breath with both her hands on her knees. When Cannon challenged his grip on the wire cutters and looked at the door, he let out an ah, struck speechless. The fuck? Another one? How is there another one? You were gone for like 2 minutes! Who the fuck had time to do that? How? You weren't even gone! I mean, there are ways I could probably do that. Shit. How do you do it? If you had like an invisible paint or something that you'd use, like or like paint that would take some time to settle in, and like later on, that could create enough of an alibi of like, because the idea you painted this in a couple of minutes is not possible, right? We can just accept that. Well. I mean, the thin lines... I guess if you were quick enough? I don't know, it's weird. It's weird. Like, this seems... This is, like, magical. Like... They weren't gone long from the door. Now, the question... Ooh, actually, the real question is... Was Eva and Hideyoshi killed before the door was unlocked or after it was unlocked? That's the true question. What if they were just sleeping? What if they were just passed out? And then the door would have made... No, because then how do you get to the chain? Oh my god. Okay, well, so we this is what I meant. Like, we won't know what exactly happened until a second murder happened, and this already feels like it's goddamn impossible. Okay, let's see where this goes. What is this? Kumasawa screamed weakly, her face pallid. This was no surprise, because right there, on the door, just like the magic circle that had been drawn on the shutter of the Rose Garden storehouse, there was another eerily shape drawn with blood-like paint. However, it would be odd to call this one a magic circle, because unlike what most people would expect, it wasn't a circle drawn with shapes inside of it, but a slightly more complicated geometric shape. However, those strange characters filling in the gaps which weren't from the alphabet, were the same kind as the ones on the magic circle on the shutter. But the thing that Cannon struck speechless wasn't how eerie the magic circle was. It was that something like this hadn't been there a short while. Like, see what I was saying? Like, it's almost impossible. There's no fucking way someone could have drawn this in the matter of time. First, he had taken a trip back to the kitchen. After that, he had gone to the storage room and grabbed the tool and headed right back. Putting those together, it couldn't have been more than 5 minutes. How could something add something this creepy during that period of time? And as though it had just been drawn, almost like the door itself was bleeding. Several unsettling vertical red lines slowly dripped down, getting longer and longer. Ooh, so that means the paint is still fresh. Eek! Kumasawa's knees gave way, and she sank down on the spot. If Kumasawa hadn't done this first, then Kanon would surely have wanted to. Beatrice-sama. It's the work of Beatrice-sama. How horrid! How horrid! Kanon gulped and readied the wire cutter and approached the door. He didn't want to get close to this disturbing magic circle, and he really didn't want to touch the steadily dripping substance that looked like blood. But if he didn't get close, he wouldn't be able to cut the chain. Fighting this cold feeling, he gulped again, and after gathering his courage, he went even closer, putting the wire cutter against the chain. He then pressed with all of his strength and managed to cut through the chain far more easily than he anticipated. The cut chain fell into two separate pieces, which continued to clang as they swayed back and forth. Kanon-san, there is an envelope by your feet. Isn't that the master's? He looked at Kumasawa, had also noticed the western envelope at the bottom of the door, and that sealing wax had been sealed with the head's ring. Kanon hesitated for just a second over whether he should open the letter first or check inside the door, but eventually decided on fulfilling his original purpose. Kanon pulled out a handkerchief from his pocket, just so he wouldn't leave fingerprints on the door. If his worst fears were realized, the police would want to investigate this room too. He slowly pushed the door open. He was able to get more clearly heard the sound of the television, which had been seeping out faintly this whole time. Eva-sama. Eva was lying head up on the bed with her shoes still on. Kumasawa, who had fearfully entered after Kanon, who was hiding behind her back, screamed a short "Eek!" again when she saw Eva like that. Ava's shoes had been the first part that Kanon had seen, so the oddness of wearing shoes in bed was the first thing to strike him. But when Ava's head had shifted into his line of sight, Kanon couldn't help but let out a short scream like Kumasawa. Right in the middle of Ava's forehead, something had been placed? Something was growing there? No. Right in the center of her forehead. Was it an old-fashioned knife? That, or some weapon like it was sticking out? At the base of where it was stuck in, blood dripped down, staining the sheets on the dark other side of the bright red. Kumasawa's knees gave way once more, and she sank down onto the floor. Her mouth kept flapping open and closed, but she couldn't even scream. Eva was dead, with some kind of weapon sticking out of her forehead. Both eyes were open wide, and the image of a person who killed her must have been burned into them. But only the mouth capable of naming that person had been shut for all eternity. Even though her forehead was the last place they wanted to look, they couldn't tear their eyes from it. Right there, the weapon was stuck in Ava's forehead, standing almost perfectly upright. And on the handle was a complicated design that you wouldn't expect to see from an ordinary weapon. That thing could be summed up with the word occult. It was a vulgar object, with a design that might have been of some demon. What about Hideyoshi-sama? Hideyoshi-sama! Eva was on the top of the bed, and the other bed was empty. Where was Hideyoshi? After taking a backwards glance at Kumasawa, still on her knees and stupefied, he checked the bathroom just in case. And in the moment he opened the door, he was greeted by the steam and the sounds of the shower. The bathroom had the same familiar style as most hotel bathrooms. When taking a shower, a waterproof curtain was used to keep the water from flying out. That waterproof curtain was half open, and lying tumbled down in the bathtub was Hideyoshi, completely naked with both eyes open, and pointing right at Kanon. Just like Eva, a weapon with a demon-like design was stuck in his forehead. Since his head had been under the shower's hot water this whole time, his face wasn't half covered with filth like blood like Ava's had been. But the sight of him dead, still taking a shower, was tragic enough. Just then, they heard Natsui's voice coming in from the hall. She was probably coming with Genji. Again with this graffiti. What about this letter? What does it say inside? I don't know. I haven't read it yet. We shouldn't touch it carelessly. The culprit's fingerprints might be left on it. God, this song! That drop is so good! The culprit's fingerprints might still be left on it. and she handed it over to the police. They went out of their way to leave it here. I'm sure they wouldn't have left the fingerprints, as Natsui said that she picked up the envelope, and before checking its contents, she entered the room herself, where she found Eva dead. Eva-san! Madame, Hideyoshi is here too. This is truly atrocious. Cannon, turn off the shower. Don't let this be any more pitiful than it needs to be. Yes, ma'am. Cannon gripped his handkerchief and twisted the valve, turning off the shower. In the bathtub, a small jar of body soap was falling on with its cap off. It really looked like it had been attacked while taking a shower. There was still a small splash of blood clinging to the white bathtub, and the combination of red and white made a horrible contrast. Dr. Nanjo. I understand. No signs of post-mortem lividity. Rigor mortis hasn't even begun either. It would seem that an hour or so has passed since they were killed. Okay, so they were killed. So let's take some notes here. Hideyoshi and Eva both got stabbed in the head. Down in the bathroom, the same gas that Ava's found us in. Like Ava, there was a weapon resembling an ice pick sticking out on his forehead. You can't see either of them by looking through the gap in the door while the chain is set. You can't see them, so you can't reach them. So how could a human possibly kill them? So is Maria... Is Maria writing these? Because the way that she's laughing right there, right? But that's how Maria laughs. So, So is Maria writing all of this? And if so, why? Which, okay. See, that's weird. That's really weird. Because that tells me Maria has powers outside of the game, outside of the narrative. This isn't like, okay, this isn't like a typical menu, right? Where it would give you just a brief description of the characters. This is, if we accept that these are actually statements written by Maria, it's almost like she herself has powers too. Or at least outside of the narrative that we are being told. Okay. Enough theory crafting, let's continue. We're at an intense moment. It just, that felt interesting to me. So here we go. It seems an hour or so has passed since they were killed. So this is where I was going into it. So, I was wrong. They weren't killed when the door was open. They were definitely killed, or they were killed before the door was open, not after. That can sometimes be tricky because the idea would be, well then how did they get in if the door was locked? But again, the chain was there, so that kind of, so they were killed an hour ago. But even so, how a weapon with such a short handle could have done that to his skull, I cannot imagine. Nanjo checked their purses and their pupils, making certain of their deaths once more. As Cannon watched with business-like treatment, he thought, couldn't you tell at a glance they're dead without doing all that? Nanjo thought that by removing the weapon, but decided better to preserve the scene and hand it over to the police, so he left it alone. But a close inspection of the base showed that it didn't even have a blade. In fact, it was more conical than blade-shaped. He noticed that rather than a knife, it was more like a short-handed spear, something with a shape better suited for thrusting than slicing. Some people might have likened it to a thick ice pick rather than a short spear. At any rate, after looking at the scene, no further words were needed to describe what the sort of terrible purpose such eerily designed weapons were originally made for, nor was it necessary to explain how they carried out their function. Natsui, hoping to escape this repulsive steam filling up the bathroom as soon as she could, covered her mouth with a handkerchief and dashed from the room. Just viewing this gruesome bodies for an instant had enough to burn the image into her eyes. If she looked any longer, that image would surely remain in her vision for all eternity. The rising urge to vomit was exactly the same feeling she had in the moment at the guarding storehouse. For a while, Natsu couldn't help but stand with her back facing the guest room, fighting that sickness in her stomach. At any rate, we can't let George-san see this room. Seal this room with all haste. Yes, we mustn't let them see. If George-san saw his parents in this brutal state. But they couldn't tell that those fiercely racing footsteps in the hallway belonged to George, even before he came dashing into the room. George-sama and the other children had been waiting in the parlor. However, when they saw Genji speak to Natsui, when they saw her turn pale and fly out of the parlor, they sensed a foreboding. And when they saw a large room of people gathered around the guest room, they were sure of it. Father! Mother! What is this? Another magic circle? Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi are safe, right? Hey, Kanen-kun! What's this all about? Battler-sama. Kaden didn't have to say anything. George's screams after he ran into the room told them everything they needed to know. Ah! Who did this? I'll kill you. I'll kill you! George-kun, hang in there. Natsui touched George's shoulder with her hand, and he violently shook her off. George fell over beside Ava and buried his face in the bed in front of his mother's face, wailing. Then he pounded on the bed with his fist, over and over again. George, Nissan, hang in there. Battler? Battler-sama? Battler had his back against the wall of the hallway. He was covering his eyes with his right hand and weeping without restraint. Horrible. That's horrible. He proposed to the girl he loved and lost her the next day. And on the same day, even his mom and dad were killed. Isn't that too harsh? Of course it's sad when anyone dies, no matter who it is. But the Battler, those left alone by the deaths of others, were far more worthy of pity. Everyone here now had lost someone close to them. George wasn't the only one to be pitied. However, George's pain was far greater than everyone else's. Battler? I know everyone dies sooner or later. If you're human, you eventually have to fight the sorrow of losing someone close to you. But still, shouldn't that day be far in the future for Anaki? And shouldn't those deaths visit him at least one at a time? Horrible. It's too horrible. The bastard! The bastard! Doesn't he have even a speck of human sympathy in him? Ooh. Battler, don't cry. Don't cry. Mira tried to confront Battler in a mechanical-sounding voice. Battler violently wiped away his tears. Yeah. Damn it. I won't cry anymore. Tears of regret, tears of sadness, I won't shed them again. It's all useless. It just got me backed into a corner. Always on the defensive. That's useless. It's all useless. I'll spin the chessboard around. That bastard probably thinks we'll be running scared like sheep until tomorrow before we try anything. But guess what? I'll spin it around. That bastard can't escape this island until tomorrow either. We won't be hiding away, pissing ourselves. That bastard will. I'll expose you, you'll see. By tomorrow? No, screw tomorrow. Tonight! Before tonight's over, I'll be gripping you by the collar. God, Battler's such a badass. That's hard. It's actually legitimately pretty fucking hard. The way Battler is, like, gaining willpower, even, like, because this would crush a normal person, right? You have to imagine that 8 people have died so far. So, we have 8 people that we've just lost in your family. That would probably, even like 1 or 2 people would be enough to kind of crush you, right? I guess some of the steroids probably wouldn't matter. But his father's dead. Mother's dead. Aunt and uncle died. And also, like, just the pain it's experiencing for, like... This would... Realistically, most people would not be able to turn around like that. So the fact that Battler's like, nah, fuck that. I'm done crying. I'm gonna fucking get revenge. You know, there's something, like, really... I don't want to say noble, because it almost feels like you're masking the pain, but to turn that into energy, like that, it's almost respectable, that mental willpower. At any rate, we'll lock this room and leave everything as it is until the police come. No objections, I take it? Natsui announced it as though she didn't care whether they agreed or not. If anyone heard the right to object, it would have been George, and he looked as though he'd shed enough tears. George nodded slightly, still facing away from the others. And when he stood up, everyone else agreed, too. Natsui still hadn't opened the western envelope with the Head family head that she picked up. But now that they decided to leave this room, she decided to unseal it in the parlor where everyone could watch. As soon as they walked into the hallway to head back into the parlor, some of them immediately felt something out of place, or maybe sensed something strange. Stinks? Did you notice it too, Maria? Seriously, what's that smell? It's awful. When everyone sniffed the air, they did notice a horrible burnt smell drifting through the hallway, one that none of them smelled until then. I will go quickly check the kitchen. I'm sure I turned the flames off. After noticing a burnt smell, it was natural that Kumasawa, who had just been using the burner in the kitchen, suspected that she might have slipped up and caused it. Kumasawa hastily dashed away. Cannon, go with Kumasawa. Do not let her be alone. Yes. After nodding at Genji's orders, Cannon followed after her. He wasn't running, but as he followed her, he tried to search for the cause of the smell in other directions as well. Oh, stinks. Oh. Truly is a stench that makes the nose wrinkle. However, that doesn't mean we can just open a window for ventilation. Natsui was reluctant to open the window in a situation where self-defense was so important. Let us run a fan. I did not believe that there would be any need to open the windows. Georgia Anaki, is it okay if I talk to you? If it's about finding the culprit, then I have no problems. It seemed that George had managed to climb out of the abyss of sorrow. All that filled his chest now was a quiet flame of hatred towards a criminal who had stolen the lives of the ones he loved and his beloved parents. The chain for this room was set. From what I could tell by looking at it, I'm positive it couldn't have been opened from the outside. In other words, this is a perfect closed room. That does seem to be the case. In the case of the Rose Garden storehouse, they might have sneaked the shutter's key out of the servant's room. Or maybe they had a duplicate key. I can imagine many ways they could have done it. But this chain is different. Among generally used locking techniques, a chain is the simplest one to create a closed room with. Only a chain will block everyone coming from the outside as long as it isn't physically broken. So does that mean the culprit couldn't have gone in or out through the door? That's interesting. Just a few hours ago, I seem to remember everyone making a fuss of how to enter a room without using the door. Back then, we were all losing our cool, wondering how grandfather had disappeared from his room. The receipt Aunt Ava stuck in the door on the whim provided the door had remained sealed. And since Aunt Natsui was the only person to enter or exit during that time, she was under suspicion. Aunt Ava proposed a theory about how Aunt Natsui might have thrown grandfather out the window, and left the door herself. But this door is much simpler. It was sealed from the inside by a door chain. The window had also been locked from the inside, and the bodies had been found inside the room. This time it had really been, without exaggeration, a true closed room. That's right. If you include grandfather's disappearance, 3 cases have occurred, and all 3 times the door has been the point of interest. The first was the shutter. There was a key in the servant's room, and we assumed someone knew about that. It really can't be called a closed room. The next was the door sealed by the receipt. However, Aunt Natsui entered that room, so if grandfather had left through the window or been thrown out, like she would have been able to lock the window before escaping. Or, like my theory, grandfather had hidden until the receipt was gone and left the room later. Basically, this door can be defeated with a handful of desperate tricks. In that sense, you really can't call this one a closed room either. And now, we have a door sealed with a door chain. Finally, we have to give up. The window, the door, everything had been locked. It was a perfect closed room. The first hadn't been a closed room because everyone could be suspected. The second hadn't been a closed room because Aunt Natsui could have been suspected. But this time, no one could be suspected. This was the perfect closed room because the door formed a seal that blocked everyone equally well. In that case, did the culprit carry out the crime without entering the room? There's some sort of method outside the room? Good point. Even though the chain makes it impossible to open it wide enough for a person to fit through, you could open it a small crack. Did the culprit knock on the door to make them peer out before attacking them? Wait, am I missing something? Yeah, you are. If Aunt Ava's body had been lying right next to the door, then it might have been possible. But she was on the bed in the back of the room. And Uncle Hideyoshi was even in the bathroom. Looking from the crack in the door, you couldn't even see them. And you couldn't reach them with your hands either. Damn it, it's all useless. I don't have a clue. Something about tugging softly at my sleeve. It was Maria. Ooh. Satisfied? What do you mean, satisfied? Battler, since you didn't want to suspect any of your relatives, you made a wish, saying you wanted the culprit to be Beatrice, right? Well, Beatrice granted that wish. Just as you asked, she did something that was completely impossible for a human to make you believe in the witch. And now you're complaining? How selfish. Ouch! I tapped Maria, who was laughing unpleasantly on the head with my fist. Sure. Thanks for granting that wish. That just now was to thank you, and also to teach you to stop laughing when it's inappropriate. More importantly, tell me. There was another mysterious scribble on the door to Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. Was that another magic circle? That one had a really memorable characteristic design, so I hoped you'd at least know what it was. Ouch! I don't know, which is why I'm letting you take the credit. Quit whining and explain. You sure are violent, Battler. I won't tell you if you're too mean, get it? Ouch! Oh, I'll say it, stop hitting me! That's the first magic circle of the moon. What does it mean? What is this magic circle's effect? What does the Hebrew writing mean? The words are from the Old Testament, Psalms 107, verse 16. For he has broken gates of brass and cut through the bars of iron. This magic circle has two effects. First, it can open a door regardless of which method had been used to lock it. That sure is convenient. So you're saying they're trying to make it look like they have a witch because this closed room has a door that cannot be opened without relying on magic? And the other effect? When you're blocked by an unopenable door in all directions, it opens a door. By using it in a difficult situation, it gives you a solution you hadn't thought of until then. Generally speaking, you receive the powers of observation and discernment, inspiration, and intuition. Beatrice is trying to provoke you, since there's no way lowly humans like Battler could figure out how this door was opened. Ouch! Okay, good work, so shut up. Sounds great. I'll accept this challenge from the witch. Maria-chan. Things like witches and demons don't exist in this world. Someone killed father and mother. I don't know whether that was someone I know or not, but either way, it was definitely a human. Yeah, but how? How did they reach those two through the crack in the door? It couldn't have been more than 10 centimeters wide. At any rate, I can hardly stand the stench. What in the world could it be? Kanon and Kumasawa had gone on ahead, realizing the smell wasn't coming from the kitchen even before they arrived there. That was because they noticed an even thicker wave of stench rising up from the stairs leading to the basement, where they passed on their way to the kitchen. The boiler room. I wonder if there's something wrong with the boiler again. Those stairs led to an underground boiler room. The mansion's boiler had been old and in poor condition. Both of them had witnessed problems with the boiler on several occasions, but they never smelled the boiler belching out a stench like this before. What was that sound? The thing they heard from the basement was definitely the sound of a door closing. Kumasawa had phrased it as a question, but she already knew it couldn't be anything else. Kumasawa was so surprised at the sound that her knees gave away yet again and she cowered. After all, at that very moment, no one could have been in the boiler room. Just a few seconds ago, everyone had crowded together around Eva and Hideyoshi's room. So who caused the sound of the door closing just now? Kanon-san! After taking a second to sort out the situation, Kanon ran towards the basement. Since they heard the sound of a door closing just now, and there was no sign of anyone coming up the stairs, the person who closed the door had to be inside the boiler room now. If the boiler room had been a dead end, Kanon wouldn't have rushed in so hastily. Kanon was a servant, so he knew. There were two entrances to the boiler room, one that opened to the mansion and one that opened to the courtyard. If he didn't chase them now, they might slip away. Kumasawa reached the same conclusion long after Cannon did, but she couldn't let him go alone. The thing in the boiler room was the culprit, an opponent who could easily have killed 6 adults in the first murder. And no matter how Cannon confronted them, he wouldn't be a match. Of course, with this argument, even if Kumasawa joined him, it wouldn't change anything. At any rate, after a delay, Kumasawa decided she mustn't let Cannon go alone, so she rushed down the stairs. At that time, Cannon was already in the boiling room. The boiler room's characteristic damp heat tormented him. It had always been an unpleasant, smelly, and hot place. And on top of that, the room was full of that horrible stench, which made Cannon feel like he was going to be sick. There was no doubt that this room was the source. In that case, Cannon seemed to be searching for that smell was coming from. However, Cannon kept gazing straight forward as he grabbed a hatchet from a tool shelf just off to the side of the door. He hadn't stretched out his hands because he wanted a hatchet. He wanted to grab a weapon. Any weapon. Why? Cannon gazed into the darkness where the naked light bulb couldn't pierce. Then he answered. In roulette, you bet on a number or the colors red and black, vying for a payoff. However, low-risk bets like black and red only offer a similarly low payoff. Those words coming from Cannon's mouth were swallowed up by the darkness. That darkness suddenly started to swirl, Glentir. Fuck, it's the butterflies again. Okay, so what the fuck are these butterflies? We've seen them pop up, strangely enough. That is not a pleasant sound. We saw these before. The first time we saw them was with Shannon, when she came in to serve, after... Oh my god, I might need to continue on, because that noise is haunting. The first time we saw them was when Shannon was proposed to, and she went back into the mansion, and she saw the golden butterflies. So apparently these golden butterflies are a thing. I just don't know what the fuck they actually mean or represent. Is this just in his mind, or what's going on? It was such a fantastical scene. Gold and sparkling butterflies that hid in the shadows all over the boiler room, flapped their wings, twinkling beautifully, and gathered in the darkness, disappearing. Cannon continued speaking, directing his words at the darkness that had swallowed up the butterflies. But the butterflies, gathered in the darkness, they probably, no, they would certainly laugh. But Cannon continued to speak without faltering in the slightest. However, if you bet on something with a lower probability, your payoff increases proportional to the risk. The master called succeeding despite astronomical risks a miracle, and called the astronomical payoff gained as a result magic. I have no interest in what kind of magic you and the master are seeking when you spun that roulette, but you forgot something. You forgot that in roulette there is a pocket that's neither black nor red. Roulette has a special pocket called zero, which means the house takes everything in certain variants of the game. That means that all the coins bet on the table will be swept up, as though everyone else was forfeit. I set my heart on just one thing. I decided that if Shannon were to be killed, and I were to be left alive, I'd sacrifice this life of mine and bring this roulette of yours to ruin. This isn't one of Master rules, and it certainly isn't one of yours. I've made this rule myself. It's not furniture anymore. I'm the zero on your roulette. Cannon's face twisted with humiliation. It was clear that his defiance against his own weakness was being ridiculed somehow. Cannon's brow creased even further, and a fierce expression that he had never shown to anyone appeared on his face. The hand grasping the hatchet was shaking. His sweat became drops which slid downward. It was clear that the emotion causing Cannon's hand to shake wasn't just anger. However, Cannon suppressed that emotion. I won't let your words lead me astray again. This is where Demon's Roulette ends. Wait another 1,000 years into hell for your next summoner, Beatrice! When Cannon raised the hatchet and tried to dive into the darkness definitely sneered. It sneered at the curse as if it were vulgar, lazy, futile, and meaningless. Oh, that is not a pleasant sound. Oh, that definitely wasn't a pleasant sound. Cannon his hatchet still held aloft. Couldn't take another step after that. With the clang, the hatchet that he had been grasping fell and rolled onto the floor. And following that, with a pair of thuds, Cannon's knees hit. Left, then right. The hand that looked like it was trying to catch the sky now the hatchet had been dropped gradually lowered, landing on his chest. Then the other hand did the same. Right there was a handle of a demonic design engraved in it. As Cannon looked down at his chest, the same type of weapon that had been stabbed into Eva and Hideyoshi's forehead was... Cannon was curled up in anguish, fresh blood dripping from the corners of his mouth. It was makeup too extreme for Cannon's white skin. Around this scene, the glittering golden butterflies danced through the darkness, mesmerizing. It was a beautiful, beautiful dance. A funeral march of tribute, ridicule, contempt for his single boy's self-sacrifice. Cannon had already been prepared for his own death, but although he could do nothing but accept the death that he received, he attempted one last measure of resistance. He grasped the handle of the weapon sticking in his chest with both hands, and gritting his teeth, with an acute and unearthly pain, he pulled it out. For only a moment, the bright red spray gushed out. It made an unpleasant blop sound. It also resembled the sound of Cannon's souls as it had been sucked into the swamp of the dead. Cannon-san! Someone! Kumasawa screamed at the incomprehensible sight in front of her. Cannon was laying in a pool of blood. Kumasawa's heart was a complete mess. What a horrible fate. He would have been killed if I had been with him. He wouldn't have been killed if I were with him. What incredible luck. But if I had been with him, I might have been killed too. As she screamed, her expression was filled with complete confusion, and all the muscles of her face were pulled up almost as though she was smiling while crying. But no one could have made fun of an expression like this. What is it, Kumasawa? Answer me, Kumasawa! The first one to dash in went Natsui, holding her the rifle. Battler and Genji dashed in after her. Normally, Polly would have started discussing the origins of that violent stench filling the boiler room, but after they saw Cannon, who was lying on the ground as if he were drowning in an ocean of his own blood, the stench wasn't important anymore. Cannon! Answer me! Genji, bring Dr. Nanjo here! Natsui realized that even though Cannon was on the verge of death, he was still conscious, so she went to Denji to get the doctor. Natsui, holding the rifle aloft, faced the darkness in the center of the boiler room and shouted, Who is hiding over there? Come out quietly! If you don't come out of there, I will shoot you without mercy. We need light! And Natsui, let's light them up! Battler, thinking quickly, reached a large flashlight from the tool shelf along the door and used it to light to cut through the darkness Natsui was glaring into. But the light only shone on the mechanical-looking piping and a door. The door had been left open a small crack, and it was obvious that someone had left through there in a hurry. Natsui, where does this door go? Genji, where does that door lead to? The courtyard. Like hell I let you get away, you damn bastard! Battler let out a war cry as he slammed into the door. Cool air from outside suddenly rushed in. There were some thin, rough stairs leading up. Battler ran up them, shouting, Wait, Battler-kun! It's dangerous to be on your own right now! Natsui had also been rushing up the stairs, chasing after Battler. They were in the courtyard of the mansion, which had been built strictly for lighting purposes, so it wasn't a very elegant place. Because it was surrounded on all sides, the air was calm and completely undisturbed, even though they could hear the sounds of the strong winds. There was only the gentle, sorrowful rain. As he ran through the cold and scattered raindrops, dashing up the stairs to the courtyard, Battler looked in every direction. Of course, the odds of him finding a suspicious silhouette just standing there nonchalantly were pretty much zero. Battler spun, looking all around. He turned again and again. He kept spinning till he almost lost his senses of direction. He prayed that he would see the culprit somewhere in the scenery. But there was no chance. All he saw as he spun was more and more of the mansion's heartless walls and windows. Furthermore, there were 2 entrances to the mansion from the courtyard, and neither of them were locked. Because the courtyard couldn't have entered from the outside the mansion, the doors had been built without locks. He didn't know which one they had left through. He had to give up. Battler pounded the wall with his fist, swearing, "Battler-kun, you mustn't run ahead of yourself." "Battler-kun?" Battler pressed his forehead against the wall, which he scratched with his fingernails as he cried. "Damn it. Damn it! Damn it! Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi, and now Cannon-kun? You killed a full 6 people, and that wasn't enough, so you had to kill 3 more? Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?" Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi were always kind and fun. I just met Cannon yesterday, but I sure had gotten along with him just fine. Why did you kill them? Why? Why? When people die, they don't come back to life again, right? They aren't gonna quickly sprout up like bamboo shoots. Why'd you kill him? Why? Why? Ah! Battler was a boy who could understand the feelings of pain and regret in a person's heart, so he cried with all his strength. Matsui had always thought of Battler as a frank person, was surprised to find he had this delicate side. At the same time, she understood how easily hurt a heart of a young person could be, so she held him. "It's all right. I will definitely protect you, George-san, Maria-chan, and Jessica. As a mother, and as the representatives of the Yorishimiya family." Yeah! Battler, after sobbing into Natsui's chest for a while, wiped his tears with a bitter smile as if he had been like that the whole time and tried to appear as though he cried more than enough already. "Anyway, let's go back down for now. Protecting ourselves is a higher priority than finding the culprit. Tomorrow the boat will arrive. After that happens, the police will come and everything will be brought to light. There's no way the culprit will escape this island, no matter how much they struggle. That's right. When the police come, when the seagulls cry, the crime will be solved." And for some reason, Battler felt a slight sense of uneasiness, as if the seagulls would never cry again. That couldn't be true. When the typhoon passes, surely the lively seagulls will return to the harbor again. God, that's so fucked up. Actually, legitimately fucked up. Like, okay. I returned to the boiler. Actually, you know what? I need a minute. I just gotta adjust one thing real quick. So, actually, let's take a look here. What does it say about Cannon now that he is, Okay, no, he's still alive at this point. Okay, give me 1 second. Be right back. I returned to the boiler room along with Aunt Natsui and told everyone weekly that we hadn't found anything. We heard that Dr. Nanju and George Anaki had carried Cannon-kun to the servant room. The servant's room had a first aid kit and a sink, and could apparently function as a nurse's office. Yeah, but that was a pretty deep wound, wasn't it? That's probably not gonna... Kumasawa-san and Jessica had accompanied them. Stains from Cannon-kun's blood remained on the floor, judging by the large amount of blood loss and the ruthless shape of the weapon that had fallen carelessly to the ground. Especially since he pulled the knife out of himself. Yeah, no, that's like one of the things about, First Aid 101. Don't pull the fucking weapon out. I figured that Dr. Nanjo's treatment would probably end in vain. The weapon was doubtlessly the same type that had been stuck on Aunt Neva and Uncle Hideyoshi's foreheads. But wait, isn't the demonic design on the handle a little different? There seemed to be some small difference on that part. Still, as far as their overall shape was concerned, the weapons were all the same type. Though it seemed brutal, we'd left the weapon stuck in Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi to preserve the crime scene. So, this was the first time we were able to have a perfect view of the entire weapon. So, as we suspected, the weapon was not bladed like a knife, but shaped like an ice pick. Or rather, a thin stake. It had a spiral-shaped pattern, sort of like a drill. It looked like something might be driven into the heart of human sacrifice in some demonic ritual. Including the handle, it was 25 centimeters long. Half of that was a stake-shaped part, which was stained with deep red blood. The length of the blood-stained part made it clear just how deeply it might have penetrated into Kanakun's chest. But Aunt Natsui and the rest didn't even look at the weapon, instead stood in front of the incinerator where the horrible stench was emitting from. They must have dragged it out. Dragged out that thing, which had been burning in the furnace. It was still smoldering and kept sending out dense waves of that awful, unpleasant smell. Yinji-san and Maria stared down at it. Aunt Natsui probably couldn't stand to look directly at it. She kept shaking her head, her back to it. Oh, I thought nothing could surprise me after everything that happened. But this is... I stood there for a while, moaning, with a rising urge to vomit. The true source of that unearthly stench was a scorched corpse which had been cooking inside the... Oh, dead. Oh, that's fucked up. Okay. Okay. So, the question at this point... Because there's two things like this could be, right? Never assume it's a new victim. Never assume it could be a new victim. But it could be a new victim. I guess, like, when I say never assume, keep the option open that it's a new victim. However, this could also be one of the other bodies. Right? What would be, like, one of the easiest things you could do if you have a load of bodies around is take one of those bodies, put it in an incinerator, and as long as everyone else thinks the other bodies are fine and never goes to check on it, you could have, like, they would naturally assume there's 6 bodies in the locked storeroom, right? So, who's to say someone didn't take one of the bodies from there, put it in the incinerator, making it seem like there's another victim when there really isn't. Just something to think about. A true source of the unpleasant stench was a scorched corpse that had been cooking inside the incinerator. The clothes, the surface of the body, and the hair were all hideously burned. The grotesque corpse was in a state where not the face, nor the age, nor even the gender could be guessed at. But when I thought about it calmly, I realized that the corpse appearing at the time could only have been one person. It was grandfather, who had disappeared from the morning, and whose whereabouts had been unknown. I believe it's most likely the master. Again, though, if we don't have any identifying features, all we have is a charred up corpse, that doesn't really mean anything. You gotta remember that mysteries like this like to play with your assumptions of what you're thinking. And the first assumption when finding a new corpse is that there'd be a new victim, but that's not always the case. It could be. I have no evidence to say otherwise, but it could be. But it could also be a trap. I believe it is most likely the master. I agree that he would pass away in such a state. It's heartrending. But is there any proof that this corpse really is grandfather? It's burnt so black you can't even tell what sex it is. Batlakun, look at his feet. And Natsui had her handkerchief over her mouth and her eyes averted, pointed and told me to look at the burnt corpse feet. Notice how there are 6 toes on each foot? Huh? You're right. Just as Genji had said, there were 6 toes on each foot. Each individual toe had looked so normal in its line that I hadn't noticed. The master was born with 6 toes on both his feet. Consequently, the master was entrusted with the revival of the Yoroshiya family. I've heard since long ago cases of polydactyl was common. Okay, well, there you go. I heard that since long ago cases of polydactyl was common in the Yoroshiya family. So, I mean, again, outside of maybe Goda, who isn't a Yoroshiya, we had people who died who were part of the Yoroshiya family before, right? Who's to say one of them genetically were not polydactyl? It's probably hereditary. Polydactyl literally means many fingers. Because of a little mistake by God, when Piton is born, one of their toes or fingers splits into 2 and the total number increases. But a big deal isn't usually made up of polydactyl in the world at large. That's because it isn't a disease, it's something people are born with. So while they're still babies at the time they turn 1 year old, they usually take it to a hospital, given surgery to make them normal. Is it a thing? I mean, I've met a couple of polydactyl people. It's never been something that's been too... It seems like normal. Even a child with polydactyl could be treated before they were aware, so they might not even remember it themselves. Oh yeah, because some children's memories start at 3, something like that. By the way, it seems that there's a possibility this will occur in about one out of every 2,000 babies. Okay, so again, not too uncommon that we would find another person. It is not unrealistic. If the statistics was higher, it would probably be more improbable. So even though it is not usually seen, it isn't that rare at all. Speaking of which, I think Uncle Hideyoshi mentioned something to me long ago. Something about how even Toyotame Hideyoshi, the man who unified Japan at the end of the Shingoku period, had 6 fingers on one hand. According to Aunt Natsui, among the many of the Yushirimiya family heads, the ones who praised for their wisdom all had polydactyl. Because of that, when grandfather was born, his relatives were all excited that thought that he might become another wise leader. And when the leading relative all died in the Great Kinto earthquake, it apparently argued that grandfather should be the one to restore the family because of the auspicious sign of his birth. If grandfather hadn't disliked his position as the head so much, his 6th toe probably would have been seen pretty lucky for him. Come to think of it, I heard about some countries where it's believed people with polydactyl should be treated as gods and revered. That's besides the point. It's fairly common in mystery novels for a corpse to be burned to hide the identity. What the fuck did I tell you before? Oh, it's so common. But I guess that in grandfather's case, just toasting him wouldn't be enough. And grandfather's body was not simply burnt. But again, if this is hereditary, we don't know. Maybe one of the sons or daughters also had this. If the flame... This could literally be like... This could be Kraus. This could be Rudolph. This could be Rosa. If it's hereditary, one of them might also have 6 toes on each foot. And grandfather's body was not simply burnt. It was just like Uncle Eva, Uncle Hideyoshi, and the thing that had been stabbed in the Kainen-kun's chest. One of those demon ice picks was stuck into his forehead. The head ring is not on his finger. So the letter last night was telling the truth. Father would probably be horribly disappointed. Natsui let her head droop and close her eyes tightly. This room had also become a vital crime scene for us to hand over to the police. It was decided that we should leave grandfather's corpse here and lock the room, sealing it. It isn't clear when grandfather's corpse started burning in the incinerator. Since according to Ginji, the strength of the flames hadn't been that strong, the body must have started burning a long time ago. So the stench could slowly creep out of the furnace and fill the room bit by bit, eventually pouring out and climbing up the staircase. Putting aside whether that was very rare or well done, that's kind of fucked up, grandfather had been put out, killed, and burned, even though he had started out locked away in a closeted room created by his auto-lock. There's probably no doubting this. However, according to Genji-san, the boiler room is usually locked. The possibility that someone outside of our group had snuck in and committed this crime was overwhelmingly high. There's also a good chance that this person was walking around with something like a master key, after all the doors and windows throughout the mansion had been checked. But despite that, the culprit had been able to strut around the mansion freely. Does this crime confirm a 19th person exists? There's still that contradiction since they're trying to tout their existence without ever showing themselves once. Along with Krie-san's chessboard theory, I've been using this contradiction to deny the existence of the 19th person. By spinning the chessboard around once more, the very fact that this crime makes it perfectly obvious that a 19th person exists means that the existence of a 19th person is even less plausible. As long as that 19th person doesn't show themselves in front of us, if the culprit could get grandfather out of the door sealed by the receipt, if they could kill Aunt Eva and Uncle Hideyoshi from the other side of a door sealed by a chain, then could they possibly go as far as to create a fictional 19th person with strange tricks and devices? If we still want to believe that the culprit is among the 18, then the list of suspects has grown very short. The 4 of his kids, Aunt Natsui, Genji-san, Kumasawa Bachan, and Dr. Nanjo. One of these people had to be the culprit. Wait, We can't be sure of that. Just a second ago, we started doubting whether the corpse was actually grandfather's, right? Maybe we can think of it as another bodies in the same way. For example, the first 6 all had their faces horribly smashed. Some of the bodies had enough of their faces to show to confirm who they were, but that old bastard, for example, had lost his entire face, as though the whole thing had been neatly peeled off. We only figured out whose body it was by the clothes and surroundings, see what I mean? Goda's probably the only one who... Okay. Let's just pause this for a second, right? Let's think this through. Goda is a bit of a larger guy. So in order for me to body double, you'd have to get a body of the same structure. So it's probably not Goda, right? Shannon had only half her face removed, so we could probably eliminate her off the guest list, because we can definitely tell it's Shannon, right? So anyone with like half their face, like Kraus here, would be... We'll leave them off the suspect list, because we have enough of their face to say, hey, this is them. We can't tell the identity of him. Kriei, and Rudolph, right? And Rosa. Actually, here's the thing. We don't know much about Kriei and her motivations yet. We know about Rudolph, and like he was obviously after the fortune, right? So he could potentially be plotting to get more money. What is Kriei's motivations in all this? She seemed kind of like a backdoor character. I mean, I don't want to suspect her because she's been pretty cool so far, but I don't really know all that much about her. I mean, the same could be said about Aunt Rosa, but I don't know. She seemed to have the same motivations of, would she kill her own family? See, that's the question with these two, right? Are they desperate enough to kill their own family to reverse their situations, right? There could be something to that. Kriei is not, outside of marriage, has no connection to the Yorishimiya family. There could be something there we haven't seen yet, and she could have potentially faked her own death. But then, again, we have grandfather here, right? I mean, the whole body has 6 toes. Kriei wouldn't have been born with 6 toes. So, well, she could have used Rudolph or Rose's body, only to make us think that Kenzo is dead. Yeah, until I know more about Kriei, she's starting to... I'm not saying she's prime suspect, but I think there might be something to her. I don't know what it is yet, but we'll find out. Maybe we'll find out. Let's see. We figured which body was which by matching their clothes and surroundings. Did the culprit prepare a fake body beforehand and alter it to make it look like they died, even though they were actually hiding somewhere after committing the crime? It sounds ridiculous, but it wouldn't be impossible to trick the pull off. It's too early to give in to this 19th person. No, this witch. Maria-chan, you mustn't stare so fixedly anymore. Come on, Battler-kun, too. I'm worried about Cannon's condition. We mustn't remain in a place like this any longer than necessary. Let us return. Oh, Maria didn't go out with everyone else, but remained in the boiler room. The thing she's staring at so fixedly probably wasn't grandfather's body, but the demon ice pick sticking out of his forehead. It was probably the sort of item that enthusiastic couldn't bear to ignore. I tapped on her forehead. Hey, Maria, what's Beatrice after? Is it all of our lives? Beatrice will revive very soon. At that time, none shall be left alive. How can you laugh at something like that? Do you think you're the only one who's safe? Why don't you feel like you're in danger? Why aren't you scared? Beatrice made a promise. She was going to take me to the Golden Land. It's a wonderful place where you have no obligations. Everyone's always together, and everyone is always nice to everyone else. I'm looking forward to it. The time will come very soon now. I can't do her laugh. It's too... I can't. Just what kind of person is Maria? I only know that Maria was like 6 years ago, when she was 3. She was once pure and obedient, a good kid. The new Maria 6 years later, and the Maria I knew, didn't seem to fit together. But just who is this witch who calls herself Maria? To Maria, who ostensibly believes in the witch, this series of unsolvable crimes is proof that the witch actually exists. Every time something occurs that would be difficult for a human, it becomes a little harder for the rest of us to not believe in Beatrice. It was an intense pressure for Maria to see her relatives who were once firmly denied the witch's existence. Or intense pleasure to start acknowledging the witch's existence one by one. Is that why she's in high spirits? Maria, let me ask you this one more time. You'll probably answer the same anyway, but I'll just ask once more. Who? Yesterday, you were given a letter in the rose garden. Who gave it to you? Oh, like I said, Beatrice. Battler still doesn't believe? Oh. Maria only repeated what she had already said. Maria met with the 19th person, the witch. Was that really a 19th person? Or did one of the 18 just get her to say that? All that's certain is that Maria had been with the rest of us constantly. She always had an alibi and hasn't done anything suspicious. She's simply overjoyed at being made Beatrice's messenger, and certainly isn't the 19th person. Supposedly. That's right. I wonder what's written in that letter we picked up in Aunt Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi's room. Aunt Natsui should probably still have it with her. Okay, Jesus Christ. Good point to stop for just a moment. I'm gonna go grab myself something to drink. And, yeah, I hope everyone's enjoying the story. I'm actually having fun with it. I really like this. Everything I ever said is come from video games and horse shit. It's all bullshit. I just say what comes to mind. My own thinking. Video games and what the fuck comes to mind. I literally don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I feel like I heard that like in the last month or so, huh? Okay. Okay, I don't think I muted my mic when I was doing that. I'm so sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. I kind of ramble on my own. In the end, Kanen-kun didn't regain consciousness. Even though Dr. Nanjo and the rest did all they could to heal him, of course, there was very little that could be done on the island with this without proper medicine and proper facilities. However, Kanen wasn't the only human ever to confront the culprit. If he could have given us some kind of clue. However, at the time, they carried Kanen away. It was already too late. My sincere apologies. Without proper facilities, there was nothing I can do about such a serious wound. No, that's perfectly understandable. Thank you so much for giving it your very best. Dr. Nanjo's shirt had been sprayed with a violent spurt of blood, so it was easy to imagine the devotion to which he tried to save Cannon's life up until the last second. Jessica was crouched in the corridor, crying softly. She'd probably been taking care of Cannon-kun until the moment of his death. George Aniki tried to approach her with the words of comfort, but when Jessica pushed him away, he stopped trying to force her to talk and left her alone. Only I hadn't let Cannon go so alone. Oh. Do not let that bother you. If you'd been with him, you would have probably been attacked as well. The fool, she rushed on ahead and paid for his mistake. How can you say it like that? Cannon-kun spotted the culprit and bravely stood up to them. If only Kumasawa had gone with him, the culprit might have been hesitated and chosen to run away. Emotion-filled words that I never thought I'd hear from Jessica's mouth tumbled out. Kumasawa, looking truly sorry, could do nothing but hang her head. Jessica. You shouldn't talk to her now. It's the same for me, and probably for you is right, Battler-kun. We don't know what's going on, but it feels like our hearts are going to split open. There were tears in George Aniki's eyes again. Seeing Jessica break down crying probably brought him back to the pain of losing his parents. I've done my crying all at once, so I didn't feel like crying anymore. However, I understood how great the pain in their hearts was. It's okay, Jessica. Oh God, no, please don't. Please don't. Oh no. Oh no, this is gonna be terrible. Okay. It's okay, Jessica. You'll be able to meet Cannon again soon. Stop it! I don't need you trying to console me like that. Beatrice will resurrect the dead and even the love that had been lost. So you'll definitely be able to meet with him soon. Then everyone will be able to live in peace. So the one who killed Cannon-kun is this Beatrice who supposedly gave you that letter yesterday? Where is she? Where's she hiding? I'll find her and tear her apart. Tell me! You know who the culprit really is, don't you? Why do you know, and what are you hiding? Tell me, damn it! Lady, please stop. Oh. Beatrice exists. Oh. Damn it, let me go of me, Genji-san. Maria knows who the culprit is. She's hiding their identity even though she knows. She must be telling them what we're doing, guiding them as they kill us. Jessica, be quiet. Jessica grabbed at Maria. Genji tried to stop her, but Jessica could not be calm. The next thing I heard was the sound of Aunt Natsui slapping Jessica's face. After that, only Jessica's sorrowful, sobbing voice resounded throughout the hall. Maria-chan, I know there's no way you're the culprit. You've been with us since the beginning. There's no time for you to communicate with any culprit. So I want you to tell me something. This Beatrice who handed you the letter yesterday, who was she? Although the words seemed kind, they clearly showed that George had some remaining doubts about Maria. He didn't usually actually grab at her. However, he felt exactly the same as Jessica did. Aniki. I already asked her about the same thing a second ago. Her answer was always the same as before. I want to hear it from Maria's mouth. Who is Beatrice? Even if I told you, you wouldn't believe anyway. What do you mean by that? Could it be the culprit's someone we know well? And you're keeping it silent because you're covering for them for some reason? Who gave you that letter? I got it from Beatrice. I'll say it no matter how many times you ask. I got the letter from Beatrice. George Oni-chan, do you refuse to believe in Beatrice because she's not an opponent you can hit? You want to turn your feelings of helplessness into violence and beat someone up? So you won't be satisfied unless your opponent is a human you can hit? So even if I tell you the truth, you won't accept it. So it's pointless for me to tell you. You won't believe. But I'll keep saying it, because it's true. Beatrice exists. The door to the Golden Land will be open soon. I'll go there. Beatrice promised. In that world, Mama is nice, and Papa is with us and also nice. I want to go there right away. Everyone is afraid of Beatrice. That's only natural. So calm yourselves. Beatrice said so herself. By the time the typhoon has passed, I'll have ended everything, she said. Ouch! Maria, I don't mind you being talkative, but let's leave it at that for now. I bet this is all a pretty happy situation since you're always going on about how witches exist. But keep that to yourself for now. Don't try to force that on other people. Oh. I know I've been creeped out by this girl for a while now, but there really is something wrong with her. Don't you think so too, Battler Genji-san? Kumasawa-san? What about you, Mom? Maria knows who the culprit is and she's hiding it. Okay, maybe she hasn't done anything directly, but she's definitely working with the criminal. That's right, she's a spy. We can't let her stay with us any longer. That's... Jesus. Maria-chan, you must realize there are times when indiscreet conversations is best avoided. If you keep adding oil to the fire, even I will get very angry. Natsui glared at Maria with frightening eyes. Ooh! Ooh, that is... See, that's different. That is almost intentional, right? It's like, was Aunt Natsui... Okay. Here's the thing. We had saw that Aunt Natsui was having some issues with, like, wanting to be a part of the Yoshimiya family and feeling rejected, right? The way she's glaring at Maria now almost hints that, like, she's wanting Maria to shut the fuck up, obviously. But why? Is she saying it because to keep the control of the, the sort of, as a parent figure, warning a child not to keep going on? Or is she saying, is there something there where it's like, Natsui is the culprit, and you did hand a letter to Maria to say that it was Beatrice, and she's basically saying, Maria, now's the time to stop talking. Because she's worried that Maria will say too much. I wonder which it is. I don't know who to suspect. Every time I read a little bit more, it's always somebody else that's like, is this really what's going on? And Maria was used to Aunt Rosa's loud style of scolding, but she apparently hadn't built up a resistance to Aunt Natsui's quiet sort of scolding. She shrugged and kept her mouth shut. A desolate feeling filled the room. It felt as though things would just get more complicated if anyone spoke. How many more people had already died? 6 people in Dad's group. After that, both Ava and Uncle Hideyoshi, Kanen-kun, grandfather. There were a whole 18 people on the island, supposedly, and 10 of those people have been killed. That's more than half of us. And right now, there's no absolute proof that the remaining 8 people will be safe. At any rate, there is no time to quarrel. Now that we've certain that the culprit can enter and leave the mansion at will and strike out of nowhere, we must give out our undivided attention till surviving until tomorrow. I agree strongly with that, Natsui. We can figure out who the culprit is at our leisure tonight. For now, though, we better find a place to barricade ourselves in. As I said this, I pointed out the clock to everyone. It was already 8 at night. We had been receiving shocks after over and over again until the early morning, and our bodies and minds had been both completely tired out. Still, there's still a long, long time until tomorrow. We need to find some place to barricade ourselves so we can rest our bodies and get the smallest amount of relief. I agree. Everyone is already pushing their mental and physical limits, myself included. I believe it'd be wise to take that into account as we move forward. That's right. There's a high probability that the enemy's got their equivalent of a master key. Were Shannon, Cannon-kun, and Goda-san holding master keys? Yes. They were supposed to have them on their persons during work. We didn't want to disturb the scene, but we didn't investigate that closely. We can't eliminate the possibility that someone stole a key from them. In the first place, we know the culprit might have visited the servants' room at some point to unlock the curtain shed shutter. It's conceivable that they obtained a master key from these earlier on. There were many servants serving the Urashimiya family. Because of that, there were several master keys. Furthermore, every time that one employee started or finished working, the keys were passed between servants. We acknowledge that they had probably been gotten a bit sloppy at times in the past. Even if they borrowed a bundle of keys from the pocket of one of the murdered servants, is there any safe place that even those keys couldn't open? Because of the nature of the job, we've entrusted the keys to all the rooms. All of them in the mansion and in the guest house. So in other words, no matter where we hole up and lock ourselves in, it'll be pointless? Fine, who cares about locking up? If you're gonna come up, bring it on, damn it! I'll beat you at your own game. The enemy won't approach us from the front. I don't know about the first 6, but if we look at what happened to my parents and Cannon-kun, and even grandfather, the enemy has only gone after isolated people. They don't have the power to assault all of us openly in a secured room. That's right. It's just like Anaki says. And maybe Aunt Natsui's rifle can serve as a deterrent to stop them from attacking. I hope that is enough, but... Maria, I know you want to say something, but keep it to yourself and stay quiet for a while. Who? Maria probably wanted to say something about how witches weren't afraid of things like guns. But if she were to say it out loud, the atmosphere around here would suddenly start to get pretty edgy. I noticed and decided to put a stop to it. If I may, I do know of one place that cannot be entered even with the servants' key rings. Where is it? That would be the master's study. I'm against this. I don't even want to think about going into grandfather's creepy room. How many keys can gain access to that room? There are 2. I always have one on my person. The other was held by the master himself. Just now I found this on the corpse in the boiler room. Genji took a handkerchief out of his pocket and opened it, showing us the burnt and filthy study key. Then he showed it alongside with his own key, which he held once led to Natsui. Normally, it would have been proper to leave the master key for the police, but because of the master's orders to protect the safety of the study, I borrowed it for the time being. I see, which means that Kenzo's study is the only place where we can be safe. It would appear that way. I don't even want to think about that being shut in that strange room all night, but it appears we must acknowledge that his room is safer than anywhere else right now. Even though grandfather locked himself up in that safe room, the culprit brought him out and killed him. Can't be certain it's truly safe. According to your theory, grandfather cleverly found a way around that receipt trick and left the room of his own free will. If so, the room might be a good place to barricade ourselves in too. You're too optimistic, Anaki. However, at the same time, I thought he brought up an interesting point. After all, it gives us a chance to question the enemy, the witch herself, about how she sealed the sealed room had been opened. If we assume the culprit had used some technique to kidnap father from his study, they'd have to show us the same trick again if they wanted to assault us in the study. And that'd give us a chance to make the culprit prove how they did it right before our eyes. She really was a witch. We'd be forcing her to use her little magic trick to open the door right in front of us. But that probably is impossible. If you spin the chessboard around, it's obvious the culprit is acting in a way that'll make us think they're a witch. So if she really is a witch, all she gotta do is appear in front of us and wow us with a colorful display of magic. Since she avoided doing that, everything must be the work of a fake witch who wants us to think she's real. Therefore, a culprit who used a technique other than magic to defeat the closed room couldn't open the door before our eyes. Is grandfather's room big enough to stuff 8 people in? Yes, there is a bed, a sofa, blankets, and so it is not luxurious, but should be more than suitable for spending the night. There's also a sink, a bathroom, a refrigerator, and a liquor cabinet. Whoa, it's incredible! But isn't it weird? You're saying he built another house inside his house. It's pretty cramped for the last house of someone like our grandfather. For the last house of someone like our grandfather, who bought a whole island and realized all his dreams. That's right. After some point in time, father probably couldn't feel at peace in any other place, even inside the mansion. He always sneered about how he shut himself up in there, and this time we're the ones who are going to shut ourselves up. Jessica spat the words out. Jessica-chan, it sounds like you'd rather go search for the culprit than stay shut up somewhere. Of course. I don't think we'll be able to find them if we start searching on our own. In the end, we can't do anything but wait. It doesn't matter where we wait, does it? I'm not going to run away or hide. Why don't we just take it easy in the parlor watching TV or something? Oh, actually, I'll be right back. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I had a phone call I had to take real quick, but, you know. Of course, I don't think we'll be able to find them if we just start searching on our own. In the end, it won't do anything but, we can't do anything but wait. And it doesn't matter what we wait, does it? I'm not going to run away or hide. Why don't we just take it easy in the parlor watching TV or something while we wait for this Beatrice-sama to appear? It's perfectly fine if she doesn't appear. There's no need for us to be the ones who expose the culprit. Well said. We shouldn't take any needless risk before the police arrive. Thank you, Dr. Nanjo. I think we should move to the father's study. True, we have no proof that it's safe since father was taken out of there. However, I can't deny the possibility that, as Battler couldn't reason, grandfather left the study of his own accord and was attacked outside. A while back I proposed a strange theory as a stopgap measure. But just as Aunt Ava said, even though the trick would be impossible, I couldn't explain what motive would make grandfather sneak out of his own study in such a troublesome way. Plus, grandfather couldn't have used the trick unless he knew that the receipt was wedged in the door. Aunt Ava hadn't pointed out that last part, but it's clear how absurd the theory was. Does it mean the sealed door formed a closed room, just like Aunt Ava claimed? Is it an undeniable fact that Aunt Natsui was the culprit? If Aunt Ava were here now, she'd probably make the claim openly and blow my whole strange theory away. But anyway, I had to admit that a room with both a bed and a toilet that all 8 people could be shut in, and with only 2 keys, both of which were gathered here, had to be the safest place in the mansion right now. At the very least, I figured it would be better than staying shut up in a parlor, hoping nothing could go wrong. But wait, we've only been safe because we've been shut up in the parlor. Have we only been safe? Been safe only because we were shut up in the parlor? What if leaving that room and moving to an unexplored location is actually more dangerous? Oh, it's useless. It's useless. It's all useless. My busy head is about to break out into a fever. If I keep spinning the chessboard around, right and wrong will keep switching places over and over, and I won't be able to believe anything. When it seems like the culprit is one of the 18, I want to believe in Beatrice. And once I start believing in Beatrice, I start wanting to find the culprit amid the 18. So if I keep spinning around forever in the end, my thoughts won't be taken one step from anywhere they started. far back in the past was it that Kriya-sen taught me this chessboard thinking? The concept of examining the situation by spinning it around and thinking from the enemy's side. I seem to remember being so interested back then, I used it to guide all my thinking. By the way, Kriya-sen Dad's co-worker back then. Kriya-sen was Dad's co-worker back then. I never dreamed that she'd someday be added to our family. Didn't Kriya-san tell me that something once? I get the feeling she once said that, while chessboard thinking was one way to look at things, it certainly wasn't all-powerful, and it wouldn't be good to rely on it too much. Chessboard thinking is my own interpretation of something called game theory, which I read about in a book long ago. It's a very interesting subject, so you should tackle it yourself when you get into college, Battler-kun. I really want to try it. If I could study and perfect my chessboard thinking, it'd be fun to be able to read my opponent's moves, wouldn't it? But you can't believe in it blindly. Game theory is a very deep and complicated subject. Chessboard thinking is just my interpretation that skims the surface of game theory. In order to thoroughly read your opponent's moves like you're imagining, you need to study your opponent. Additionally, while chessboard thinking is convenient and practical, it isn't perfect. It has many weak points despite its convenience. Weak points? Yes. Chessboard thinking is founded upon game theory. When you thoroughly investigate game theory, it boils down to math. Do you know what the weak point of math is? It's noise. In math, when you write 1 + 1 = 2, the process will always result in 1 + 1 = 2, no matter how many billions of years have passed. Nothing more, nothing less. It's because there's absolutely no noise mixed in. But, for example, unlike math, the Japanese language has noise mixed in. Kanji are a good example. Old kanji and new kanji are slightly different, which represents an introduction of noise created by the change between time periods. Isn't history the same? There are dozens of policies that seem foolish in the modern era, but were meaningful at the time of the past. Because the rules of chess are fixed, when a pair of experts are discussing one particular layout, it's possible they could reach the same conclusion, whether they're from 100 years in the past or 100 years in the future. However, if rules of chess have gone through massive changes over time, it's possible that a discussion about the same layout would have changed as well. That's right, events in the world of humans are normally full of noise. Aren't human emotions that way? Even if the exact thing occurs more than once, there's no guarantee that humans will always act in predictable fashion. The moment we try to use math-based theory to predict someone's actions, we must be aware that our theory was built in weakness and limits. Simply put, chessboard thinking is extremely weak against noise and fickleness, as well as mistakes or incorrect knowledge. That's right. Kriya definitely said that. Chess has always been a game where both sides play by the same rules and fight with the same conditions for victory. That's why it's possible for both sides to predict the other's moves. It's possible to read your opponent because you can always suppose they'll make the best moves they can find. But what if your opponent is fickle, or a bit tired, and makes a move that can hardly be called the best? Or what if the game actually has a special rule? Some unknown thing that only the enemy knows about and can use? In fact, what if the opponent actually has some goal other than victory? Think from your opponent's perspective. That's the basics of chessboard thinking, which means if you misread your opponent, the answer you draw from this process will be complete rubbish, useless. So far, I've used chessboard theory to guess several vague bits of information about the culprit hiding behind the case, or so I think. However, I don't know anything about the culprit. Am I just playing around in a labyrinth of thought? If Kriya-san were here at a time like this, she'd probably be able to notice something with her much more sharper thinking ability. Okay. Until the very last moment, Jessica resisted moving in the grandfather's study. But in the end, Natsui persisted, and we decided to move there. Everyone completely wrapped in paranoia by now. Kumasawa-san had prepared dinner at one point, and during that time we were discovering the deaths of George Anaki's parents. Both the kitchen and parlor had been left empty. Someone suggested that the food had been poisoned while we were gone. Because of that, we were unable to even touch the food that Kumasawa-san had taken the trouble to make for us. The manner in which the first 6 were killed was still unknown, but it certainly could have been poisoned. Certainly, that would have allowed even a single person to carry out the murder of 6 large adults. Furthermore, this idea would make it easy to imagine there's only being a single culprit who had been afraid of Aunt Natsui's rifle. It would be very good for our emotional, and that was very good for our emotional stability. But the fatigue and hunger were even harsher than we'd imagined. And then Kumasawa-san made a proposal, and we all went together to the kitchen. There we gathered some canned food and other things that have been hard to poison take us. There we gathered some canned food and other things that have been hard for poison to take us with. All of Kumasawa's efforts to reward us with just a little dinner this savage day regrettably came to nothing. Food piled on the serving cart looked a little sad. We all started climbing the stairs. Aunt Natsui, who was in the lead, wearily stared into the darkness with both eyes from the barrel of the gun. Once we dragged ourselves up to the third floor, just as Aunt Natsui had warned us beforehand. There was a mixture of chemical smell and a sickly sweet odor, the stench hanging in the air that felt like it was eating in our heads. See, this is the kind of stench that would probably give you a headache if you were shut in with it for a whole night. I know it's a little late, but I'm with Jessica. I'm voted against going into grandfather's study. Felt like the stench was floating out from this magnificent door. It was the door to the forbidden study, which should defend us against any who enter. When Genji-san unlocked the door, Maria stared at the door and the doorknob with great interest. Ooh, incredible door. It's old and strict, like it could stop any jokes cold. Perfect door for grandfather's study. Power to ward off spiritual menaces is strong here. BH probably couldn't open this door. Oh? What does that mean? Maria pointed at the doorknob. A scorpion crest. No, a design like a magic circle arranged around a scorpion was inscribed there. That design. That's right. Isn't it just like those keychains Maria gave Jessica and me yesterday? The fifth magic circle of Mars is a strong ward against magic. Additionally, this magic circle is very diligently constructed and is full of power. Such a magic circle can quite troublesome to beings of magic like Beatrice. Isn't that comforting? Are you saying we could escape even Beatrice's clutches in this room? A little witch here sure is reliable. Then how did Beatrice get grandfather out? Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to stop here for right now before we go into the study. I think I'll save the study for next time. But, I'm very much enjoying this. Hope you guys are as well. It's kind of unfortunate that, everyone's dead now. Which, how presumptuous of lowly furniture like that. That's kind of a... Okay, so I'm going to stop here for now. Thanks very much for watching, and I hope you guys are enjoying this little mystery ride. How do I describe it? It might be 1 or 2 more streams of this episode, depending on how long it goes. But we're almost getting close to the first turn. Now, I know the second turn is a hell of a trip too, but yeah, it's gonna get real interesting real quick. Thanks for watching. See you next time.